Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Trip. We are X.T.C. I am Shalonda.
I'm Tristan.
And I'm Chris.
As an entrepreneur starting and growing your business, you may have a destination, but the journey getting there can be a trip. We want to be your travel companions and inject a dose of XTC as we explore real life conversations about navigating the world of entrepreneurship in the United States and in the Caribbean. So, guys, within each series, we will invite an entrepreneur to share about their entrepreneur's trip, how they got started, the ups and downs, the lessons learned. And for this series, your unique entrepreneur's trip, beyond the what and how of entrepreneurship series, we are stoked and beyond honored to have the one and only amazing Sami Haiman-Marrero, President and CEO of Urbander. And yes. And before we get into our conversation, let me just tell you a little bit of tea about Miss Sami. All right. Urbander is a minority and women business owned enterprise solution based agency that assists the corporate, nonprofit, and government sectors overcome their diversity, equity, inclusion, and multicultural marketing challenges. Urbander has been in business for over 13 years. And that is a huge accomplishment, as based on the data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, only approximately 65% of businesses fail during the first 10 years, and only 25 of new businesses make it to 15 years or more. And we know that Urbander is well on its way to go beyond the 25% that exceeds that 15-year mark. And this is due to Sami's leadership in over 25 years in public relations, marketing, and publishing. She's one of the nation's leading experts specializing in the U.S. Hispanic market and has been interviewed by international, national, and regional media. Did you guys hear that? National, international, national, and media. When we're talking about media, listen, he has been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, El Nuevo Día in Puerto Rico, the Huffington Post, MSNBC, Florida Trend Magazine, NBCnews.com, and Canada's CBC News regarding the Latino experience in the US. And most recently, in 2022, in the Orlando Sentinel for her work with Casa Culture, and that serves BIPOC affiliated organizations in Central Florida through an initiative by her nonprofit, SOS Orlando. Hi, that's a mouthful. With all those accomplishments, though, folks, to the XTC crew, she's a friend, she's a confidant, she's a cheerleader, she's a sister from another Mr. Our hot Boricua. She's truly an entrepreneur. Can I get a drum roll? We are so delighted to have her on as our first guest. Bienvenido, mi hermana. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Trip, Sami. How you doing, mama?
I'm doing great and I'm doing wonderful. Just being here with you and sharing this space with you. I'm so excited to spend this time with you. And thank you for all of that nice stuff you said about me. I'm just tired. I'm like, hey,
To our viewing and listening audience, there's going to be a lot of Spanglish in this episode.
yes, exactly. So you're forewarned, right?
You're forewarned. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's awesome. So, you know something?
Welcome.
Yes, welcome. When you Google how to start a business, you can get over 5 trillion results in 74 seconds. There's information from the SBA, the USA.gov, HubSpot, NerdWallet, Entrepreneur.com, the Chamber. I mean, it's an understatement to the amount of information that's out there about starting a business, the characteristics of an entrepreneur, and what you should or shouldn't do. So the how is covered, right? But what is less prominent is information about the real life, down and dirty experience of writing the peaks and valleys of entrepreneurship. Thus, the reason for starting this podcast and our rationale for inviting entrepreneurs like Sami to share their trip and impact stories. So, in this series, we've talked about the who and the why people embark on entrepreneurship and when is a good time to start. So, Sami, give us the tea. How did you start your entrepreneurial journey? I'm all up in your grill, girl.
Listen, totally. And you can be all up in my business. It's all good. I gotta tell you, there's never a good time to start
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship. It's like having kids. There's never a good time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just let's keep it real. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I gotta say, most people, when they're bored or in their careers long enough, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't find fulfillment
Mm.
in their
Mm-hmm.
workplace, the thought of entrepreneurship and that bug will creep in. And I'm one of those people. I want to say that at least 4 or 5 years before I dove into entrepreneurship, I was thinking about it already, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just bored out of my mind with what I was doing in the publishing industry. It was advertising, sales, and marketing, and just meeting, traveling with people, selling ad space and added value outreach programs. And it got old after a
Mm-hmm.
while. And I just felt that I was executing somebody else's purpose,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Putting money in somebody else's pocket. And that I realized too, looking around me, there was really no stability in that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you pour yourself into jumping onto that hamster wheel and doing it and doing it and doing it and trying and press and press and press and press and just trying to meet everybody else's expectations with
Mm-hmm.
that persistent feeling, gnawing feeling that this could very well end any minute, and at any given time because it's not my call. It's not,
Yep.
yeah, I
Right.
really have no control over, this situation. As hard as I try, right? It's never good enough. Let's just be
Mm-hmm.
real. Like all those evaluations that they use you're in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever. They never give you the top promotion or the raise. No, because there's always area of improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And so I fell into entrepreneurship out of necessity. Just to be very frank, I lost my job in 2008, as you all very well
Wow.
know,
Mm-hmm.
as you're close friends of mine. And when I started looking for work during the recession, I realized I wasn't going to find a job paying the six-figure income I was used to making. B, that as a woman of color, they were going to
Mm-hmm.
give a white male that good
Yep.
job, right? That all of a sudden became
Yep.
available, if it became available. And number
Mm-hmm.
three, that this was an opportunity to just put the machete between my teeth and
Mm-hmm.
just dive into entrepreneurship because, like they say in Puerto Rico, yo voy a mí. I have confidence in myself, right? So then I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if I'm making six-figure incomes, let's slash that in half.
Mm-hmm.
Let me bank on my relationships and create a minimal viable offering that I can go into the market and at least cover my basics so I don't lose my house and I could buy milk for the baby. My son was 9 months old back then,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just make
Wow.
sure that we were able to survive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel that my experience is not unique.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of entrepreneurs out there choose, and I know now during the pandemic,
Oh yeah.
it's a perfect example. A lot of people left the
Right.
workforce either by choice or because they were let go and dove into entrepreneurship because it's a viable, if you have certain skill sets, it's a viable way to put food on the table. And so
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes, again, a necessity, right? It's
Yep.
not because of choice. You just learn as you go because you got to feed the babies. That's
Yep.
basically it. And so that's how my journey started. And I only wish that I had a network of
Mm-hmm.
fellow entrepreneurs back then that I could lean in on and ask
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Right.
But in our families, we don't have people,
Right.
many of us don't have people that are entrepreneurs. And
Mhm.
so who do you go to for mentorship, right? And so
Mhm.
that was the beginning of now a 13, I can't even believe it, right? A 13-year business. And
Yep.
I gotta say, during the pandemic, we were blessed because throughout all of these years we've been working virtually. I realized from the beginning, why am I
Yeah.
stand on an office space, right? When
Mhm.
most of our clients are not even here in Florida, right? I'm based out
Mhm.
of Florida. And so why do I need to have a physical space? And during the pandemic, that was an asset that
Mhm.
we were able to bring, or an expertise, or an ability that we were able to provide our clients, and also our peers, our collaborators, because I work with all of you, right? And also to the community, the other entrepreneurs or people that were
Mm.
diving into entrepreneurship, but they do have a support system, which is
Mhm.
us,
Yep.
and
Yes.
programming like this,
Mhm.
right? Where you don't feel so alone, where you're provided the hacks,
Mhm.
you and the do's and don'ts from there, like,
Yep.
no,
Right.
don't do that because this is gonna happen, right?
Yep.
Oh, you need to draft a proposal. How do you draft proposal? Wait a second, don't do it like this. Do it like that.
Mhm.
Have you considered this, right? And then sharing resources and expertise, so that
Mhm.
way you can progress quickly. Because I've learned in my journey that when my brother and my sister are okay, then I'm
Mhm.
okay.
I'm okay.
Mm.
Yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's that's amazing. Um, I want to start by saying thank you, Sammy. And I think that's the end of the show. It was a great show, guys. But no, I really want to say thank you, though,
I
Sammy.
want more. I want more. Tell me more.
No, it's a real thank you because everything that you've touched on has been things that we've been speaking about. The we have a saying in the Virgin Islands: once the mouth cut, they will eat, and that goes to the testament of your 9-month-old son when you started your business. It's just that, you know, there's a need and we will have to survive and we will survive, and that's just it. Just looking at your journey, the fact that we spoke about not taking the trips together and how each of our stories are similar, even though they're unique to us.
Mm-hmm.
But we've pretty much treaded similar lines, and we're definitely not alone in this journey. You said it, and I don't think we've spoken about it before. That M word, mentors. You
Mhm.
know, I haven't had much mentors, or maybe people I would have looked at as mentors on my journey. Because that was just something that I wasn't accustomed of doing, of having. You know, that person that you look up to. Yeah, we know Shalana. Shalana's a big sis. She looks out, but it's just so tight. So I don't want to say like she's so tangible. It's right there that we
Mhm.
don't look at it that way. We
Mhm.
usually look at the Oprahs. Give me my points, Chris. We usually look at the Oprahs. We usually
Quick
look at
study. A quick study.
those people that's so much more like distant, and we're like, you know what, we want what they have, but we never realize that, you know what, um Uncle Chris runs a production company. Like, wow, that's somebody I could talk to about business.
Mhm.
Just different things along those lines. So I won't tie up most of the time. I'm gonna pass it off to somebody else, but I'm ready to hop back in as soon as they pause for breath. But Sammy, I'm telling you, like for real, it's just like really amazing to see another entrepreneur that has, I want to say, like really embarked on the same trip and that's sharing their story with us. Right along those same lines. You know, so
But
I'm gonna
can I
pass
tell
that
you
off.
something? It's because a lot
Sure.
of entrepreneurs, I feel, like put on this facade that everything's okay, everything's okay, everything's okay, because we're proud, right? We don't want
Mhm.
to,
Right.
it's. I had a client that years ago, from the beginning, because I'm an open book, and so a client of mine once told me, "Why do you tell people that you almost lost your house, that you were broke,
Mhm.
right?" And I said, "Because it's the truth."
Yep.
Right.
Right? That's my truth. And there's no shame in that.
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And so then I just feel that if more people really talked candidly, right,
Mhm.
about their experiences, we can, it's like an onion, right? You peel away at all the
Right.
nonsense and you get to the core, right? We can see ourselves in each other,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
then the judgment goes away, and the biases go away, the lack of sharing goes away,
Mhm.
and all that egotistical
Mhm.
BS goes away,
Yep.
Right.
and we can really elevate each other and get to a
Mhm.
place where we can all experience financial freedom
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
Right.
breathe. But while you're trying to say, oh no, no, I'm hoity-toity, everything's good. No, that's unless you
Correct.
are born into a family that's well to do
Hmm.
and that has generational wealth, you are not afforded the luxury of research and development, of going on sabbatical,
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
exploring and testing, doing focus groups and all whatever it
Right.
is you need to be doing to really launch your business, to develop your business plan. Who has time for that?
Right.
Right? Who has time? Let's just be real, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, so I'm just saying I encourage entrepreneurs, to pull away. I'm gonna use a Shalanta reference. Pull away the masks, right? Pull away
Right.
Mhm.
the masks. Just be real. Just cut through the bullshit and just be real, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And I'll actually chime in here. So, and Tristan, you were mentioning, that we hadn't talked a lot about mentorship. So for me and starting my business, Sami was the first person I went to even
Mm.
see if I should take that leap of, basically going full time into entrepreneurship and leaving my day job. And she's been that support for me, throughout my entrepreneurial journey. Where I remember a couple years ago, and somebody loves to tell a story, but it was like first quarter, and I was like, no money's coming in. I don't know what's like
you were
what's.
losing your fucking mind.
Yep.
Just say it, right? You were losing your mind.
It was
You
basically
were
that
Let's
losing your
be
mind.
real.
Let's be real. You were
it,
losing your mind.
it was a my conversation with Sami was a conversation after I had with my wife, which was, either you got to start making money or you got to find a real job. uh, so I called Sami and I was like, Sami, help me not find a real job. but uh,
So
but
it was so sweet. Yeah.
we,
Go ahead.
we we met for coffee, and she's like, yeah, you're struggling in the first quarter here, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, how did you know? She's like, because everybody struggles in the first quarter. Like, that's just when business, companies are starting to redo their budgets and everything. And I was like,
Right.
oh, so it's gonna get better like soon. And she's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but second quarter. And sure enough, that was the mentorship I needed.
Mhm.
Because otherwise I was, if I didn't know that there was hope or light at the end of the tunnel, I was about to, potentially throw in the
And
towel.
not only that, I told you too. Now you have to prepare.
Yep.
Now that you know
Yeah.
this,
Yep.
you need to prepare for next year, first
Exactly.
quarter, so you're not
Mhm.
tight, right? So you're
Yep.
not tight. And so what happened? I think it was this week when we spoke earlier in the week when I got back from vacation. I said, "So how's this quarter?" He's like, "It's fine. We're good." Right? But imagine, I went through 4 years of that.
Hmm.
The four
Mhm.
years of saying until it hit me, and I'm like, wait a second, happened to me. Wait a second, and then I saw the pattern. Right,
Mhm.
Chris only had to go through 1 year of
What?
that,
Yep.
the
Mhm.
first one, where he
Mhm.
then asked for help. He's like, call a friend, right? To show, right? Let's call
I
a
needed a
friend,
lifeline,
right?
trust me.
Yes, exactly. So,
And Sammy and guys, and I think that's the beauty of it, and that's the beauty of the conversation. You see, because I tell people all the time, like I have a lot of friends and they fail at certain things. And the beauty of it is that from them we learn what not to do. You see what I'm saying? And because you endured it for your 4 years,
mm-hmm.
you saved Chris.
Yep.
I want to say 3 years
3 years.
and
Mhm.
how many months? 9 months. You see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that's a lot of time that you just shaved off of a timeline. And a lot of times when we're having these conversations, like we don't see it. I find like a lot of entrepreneurs, we only speak about the success. So
Mhm.
that's why we're doing this here, is so that everyone else could see how real this shit really is. You see what I'm saying? Like, you do reach out. We do need to know, like, hey, and you said it, for Chris, for you it's within the first quarter. Other businesses pause during the fourth quarter. And what I had to learn was the seasons of different businesses. So in that way,
Yes.
I know when these businesses close, I need to start targeting somebody else. In the Virgin Islands,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have seasons like that. So I just know how the quarters
Got
certain quarters
sunshine.
is hit. you know. But that's the beauty of it. A good friend of
Mm-hmm.
mine, very, very good friend of mine, Rashidi Clemens. When I first started, when I told you guys I was in high school and I was doing all these different things, he was a promoter. So working with him, I saw a lot of his business losses. I saw how a lot of friends became enemies. I saw how a lot of investments went wrong. And he didn't have to be that transparent with me. But the fact
Mm-hmm.
that he was, without conversation like this, I was able to learn the what nots to do. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so now that we're doing this, I'm definitely not gonna approach it that way. You know,
Mhm.
imagine you do events where I'm talking about Sammy and I are gonna go half on the event. After the first half, it rains. In the Virgin Islands, don't let rain happen because everything shuts down. It rains. The event is a flop, and Sammy now was like, "Oh well, the event was a flop, so I'm not. I don't have to put in my half." And you're like,
Mhm.
"But I put in mine. So do I? Do you recoup? How do I recoup what I put in? Are you gonna give me
Right.
back half?" And Sammy's like, "No. Why would I give you back half? I didn't do my part."
Mm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so it became like those real situations that we endure, that we're looking at, that help motivate us through these times and help save us time, so in that way we could make, I want to say, more longer entrepreneurs. So now Chris doesn't have to endure 4 years of wondering which quarter we got to save for,
Right.
Mhm.
because and now he enjoys, I want to say, a better entrepreneurial life
Hmm.
to a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent.
Yep.
Yes.
Actually, if I could just jump in, I think we've touched a little bit in Sami's story on the why she got started in entrepreneurship, which was really just to feed the babies, right? Fundamentally, let's feed the baby. It was a survival thing. And then we touched on the when, right? It was during the 2008 recession, which is a difficult time to start any business. And then when you think of more recently in 2020, that was a difficult time to start new businesses. But according to the US Bureau, 4.4 million businesses were sparked in 2020, right?
Mhm.
So we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs or brand new entrepreneurs that are just starting this journey here. So my question to you, Sammy, is the how. How do, what are some tips that you could share with our listening audience that they probably won't get when they do a Google search, right? That gives you 5 billion results in 4 seconds. But the real deal, what are some tips on how? Like, I know that one of the things you shared was you got on the phone and you called all your friends and former clients that you knew, just throw me a bone, you know?
Yes, totally. Listen, this is all about figuring out what's the low hanging fruit
Mm-hmm.
and doing a serious assessment of the resources that you have at hand to create a minimal viable offering and start getting revenue in the door or into your
Mm-hmm.
pocket. Okay. 'Cause there's plenty of money out there, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to figure out how to get it into your pocket. Okay. And there's a lot of free stuff to do. Free
Mm-hmm.
is going through your phone and calling all of the people that you're tight with, that you're very, very close to. And I gotta say, when I was here trying to kick this thing off in 2008, I had no roots here in Florida, in Orlando, because I was working for an employer based out of New York, traveling all over the country. And so every week, so I didn't know anybody here, right? And business is relationships. That's it.
Relationships.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I started calling everybody I know. So I advise to people, number one, figure out that minimal viable offering by self-reflecting and say, what am I killer at? What are my
Mm-hmm.
skill sets and what am I killer at? that I'll go toe to toe with anybody on this one, two, or three things, right?
Mhm.
That I can say I'm a subject matter expert on this. Okay.
Mhm.
Then articulate that in a clear way that people find value in it and
Mhm.
benefit in engaging with you, saying, this is what you do. And how does that look in my business or in my industry or for me? How does that benefit me? And that's what you need to articulate. Once you have that, the phone and your contacts, right? And what you could do to solve somebody else's problems, that's it. You're in business. That's
Mhm.
it. Now, in terms of branding and communicates, that's I mean, we could do a whole semester on that.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
basics. Let's get it down to basics. Okay.
Mhm.
Figure out the name of your company,
Mhm.
register it, okay?
Mhm.
So and open up a bank account and find an accountant. Okay, that's just for business setup, right? The basic, that
Mhm.
there's
That,
more to it, but that basic business setup. Depending
Mhm.
on the industry that you are in, get insurance. You need to have insurance even if it's minimal, okay? So that way you could cover your butt, right? God forbid, I mean, I know you're very talented and everything. Knock on wood, we haven't had to use car insurance, right, in 13 years. But you just never know, right? There's
Yes.
sometimes there are
Mhm.
variables and things you can't control. Okay. And then once you have your name, keep it short, keep it
mhm,
sweet. It doesn't necessarily have to be a literal name. So, if I'm
Mhm.
selling shoes, it's like the shoe sales lady. No, it doesn't have to be that, right? You need to come up with an original name that doesn't exist. And the first thing you do is go and secure the domain name.
Mhm.
Okay. The shorter it is and the more unique it is, the
The
better.
better.
Okay. And then secure the URL. Doesn't mean that you have to get a website, but at least you have the name, right? Secure for when
right,
Mhm.
enough revenue to create the website and do your logo, create a logo. Again, simple, no more than two colors. Okay. Preferably with an icon and just the name of the company. Very simple. And
Mhm.
do your email signature. So you come across as being right? Bigger
And you are.
than you really are. And so you're like a solopreneur. It's like I used to show, I thought it was hot shit. Let me tell you, I used to show up in these meetings, you know, and with your presence, it's like you need to show up like you're there already,
right.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Confidence
that's
is
it.
a lot.
And so the signature business card, if you're already meeting people in person, have a minute. Don't slap everything on your business card. People,
No.
just the logo, the website, phone number, email,
Mhm.
that's in your name and your title. That's it. Okay. So keep it simple. And let you're your brand. You are the brand. Okay. And work on those relationships, on really listening to people,
Mhm.
understanding what their pain points are so you can
Right.
step in and bring value. That's it.
Mm. But Sammy, that's hella weird because when you Google businesses or when you Google business or how to start a business, I've heard you say nothing about this business plan. The same thing. What is it? Small business administration or whatever it is, and then they kill you with these. You need a business plan. You need. How realistic is that?
Again, I don't have a papito, right? That it's giving me no 30,000, $50,000 to do research and development to figure out, right, what's going to land and what's not going to land, right? So a
Mhm.
lot of this is trial and error. Again,
Mhm.
listening first. And then
Mhm.
once you already know what your buckets are, what's bringing in the money or where you need to
Mhm.
pivot, because that's what happens. What we do now is nothing. Nothing like, I mean, there's parts of it, right, that are consistent, but we've
Mhm.
expanded on our offerings. Okay, we
Right.
do
Mhm.
so many things are so different, right, and so much more robust than when we first started 13 years
Sorry.
ago. It's wonderful.
Mm.
So that's always going to change. But I would say that within, 2, 3 years, yeah, it's good to then sit down and do that exercise right after 2, 3 years. I don't think that at the beginning is, unless, again, if you have a daddy that gives you the money
Um,
and you could go on sabbatical and that's all you need to do, because you're going to get a loan. But,
Right.
it's not, they're not going to give us a loan, right? That's just
right.
proven
And
too that, certain groups don't get access to loans just like that, even
Mhm.
with
thank you.
the business plan. So
Right.
I recommend just do your thing, become a master of your craft, of your story, your origin story. Own your story, as painful
Mhm.
as it may be. Tell your story, mentor others without even thinking about the returns,
Right.
do the right thing, and
Mhm.
it'll work out, and eventually you'll find your tribe, right? Like when Shalonda and I started working together, right?
Mhm.
Within 6 months she's like, okay, so we need to sit down and do your plan. I say, what? And she's like, yeah, we need to talk about, right? And so Shalonda was the one that pressured me to get my act together, right? And
Mhm.
so then we
Mhm.
outlined what those buckets were and what's
Right.
bringing the most revenue, and that shifted throughout the past 4 or 5 years that we've been working together.
Mhm.
And so yeah, so you could do that as you go along. My recommendation too is like we've grown slowly but
Mhm.
steady, and whereas the 2008 recession affected our personal credit, which
Mhm.
then affected our ability to get loans for the business too. It took 10 years, right, to clear to get back into good standing.
Right.
uh, I didn't know anything. I just didn't have access to credit, right?
Yeah.
It was horrible. So I've had to self fund, and we're in a position where now the banks are calling me, and I'm like, no, thank you. I got the money,
Right.
right? I don't need the money now, right? You can kiss my ass, right? So that's where I'm at right now, right? So we're self.
I
Mhm.
love it.
If you have the ability to self fund, and so my advice is separate money, always separate money so you can self fund.
Mm,
It's important to market yourself, it's important to develop relationships, it's important to know who to be talking to,
Mhm.
listen, and identify who in the organization is really cutting the checks, right?
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
So you don't waste your time. And so yeah, so I just feel that being a student of behavior and listening and
Mhm.
surrounding yourself with people that have integrity, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that are like-minded is critical for your success. Because I didn't do this alone, right? I have Chris, I have Shalanda, I know Kristen, although we've never met in person
Right.
yet, right? We've worked in some capacity together, as well. And so yeah, that's it. I know who to call, right? When I don't, because
Yeah.
I don't know everything, but I know who to call if
Mhm.
I don't know something, right?
And that's it. And I
Sammy
think
dropping some tea. Sammy dropping that tea. Come on, people.
well, I think that's what it is that we really need to hear. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when you look up businesses, when you look up um how to's, I feel like it's bullshit because they start you with these guides that they aren't written by us.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, guys, what I told you? I feel like it's always the people not doing it telling us how to do it,
Yep.
and that's it. It's like
A lot of theory, right? A lot of theory.
you're
Uh-huh.
gonna do this, you're gonna do that. This is how it's gonna work. The business
Mhm.
plan. It took me 9 years before I really considered doing a business plan, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even trying to do a business plan for me. I ended up learning a little more about credit, and I was like, "Ooh, I want the business to have some credit, so let me figure out how I'm gonna build some credit for the business." And it
Mhm.
was like, "Well, we're not gonna give you a loan because what's your plan? How much do you plan on making?" And I was like, if I knew how much I was planning on making, I don't think I'll be like, like if I know I was guaranteed to make 15, then I know if I wanted 30,000, I'll wait 2 years and
Yep.
I'll just do, come on. And that's just how it was. So like I really like the fact that, like you said, it's just a matter of keeping it real. It's the fact that we're given these, I want to call them handicaps, because they make it seem as if it's a system to help you, but I find it's more of a deterrent before you start. So you already start to count yourself out from way before. And
Yeah.
remember, I said, Sammy, I told him this thing about trying. Like, you can't, to me, like, you can't really try. It's either you did it or you didn't do it as good as you thought you were going to do it. And that's it. So, like, oh, I tried doing a business. Okay, so you tried. What didn't work out the way you wanted it to work out?
Mm-hmm.
Because immediately what happens is that you look at it and you're like, man, we need a business plan. And you look it up, and I think the business plans usually start at about 5 pages. And you need 5 to like 15 pages.
That's
And
an
it's like, what the
outline.
shit?
That's an outline.
Right, right. And you're like, damn, like,
5 pages is the outline, bro.
like, so how many pages we really need? And then when
Yeah.
you
You
start to
know,
look at it and you're getting into it, you're
uh-huh.
like 80 pages in.
Yep.
And then, like, when you meet a real person, is like, well, we don't read anything past the first 2 pages.
Yep.
The executive
I need
summary.
80 pages.
Right.
You know, I'm going to jump in here because I was talking to an entrepreneur. He's rather successful, actually, and he's a Crucian, but he has businesses in the States. And we were talking at dinner last night, and he said that he was like, "You need a plan," and I was like, "Okay." And so I think we get fixated on the terminology of a business plan.
Mm.
And if you're doing research online, you get fixated with what the SBA says a business plan should
Right.
look like. But in reality, when I started working with Sami and we said, let's sit down and do an operational plan because she was already in business.
Yes.
Okay. She was already in business. She may not have had a business plan that you could take to the bank at that point in time, but it's like, let's look at how we're operating the business. Let's look at where we are at right now. So we looked at things like who are our current clients? Who are the clients we would like to have? How much revenue we would like to bring in? How do we reduce some of the unnecessary expenses that we may not have thought that we had, but you can cut, right? And then from there, put a timeline on it and be able to track it. So we have this motto at Urbander. It's you plan, you activate, and you calibrate. Because no matter how you plan it, once you activate and you execute it, it usually doesn't turn out exactly the way
Yep.
you think it's going to turn out.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You need to calibrate, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want our listeners to get fixated on the business plan per se, unless you're planning to seek funding, right?
Right.
Focus more on a plan. Okay, I'm starting my business. I don't have a business plan, and Shaskai is a year and a half old, and I
Mm-hmm.
work with Urbander, but I don't have a business plan. But I do have a plan as to where I want to see the company for
Right.
2020. So I shared with my brothers, Kristen and Chris, the other day. They were like, "This girl's on steroids with this damn spreadsheet." Um,
Understatement. That's an
I shared with
understatement.
them, yeah, I shared with them my 2020 integrated roadmap. That's a plan. That's a
Yep.
plan. It helps you to focus on what's important in your business
Yep.
and what are the milestones by quarter. That's how I look at it. You know, this first quarter, we're doing a lot of business development. We're reaching
Mm-hmm.
out, touching bases with making new contacts, seeing who is good collaborators, who is not a good collaborator, who are good clients, who are some clients that you don't want to bring them on board, or clients that you
Yeah.
might want to break up with. You know, it's like you're assessing. I'm usually the hatchet woman, but that's kind of
Yes.
fun.
I
But just
need you in my life. Just come over.
assessing those things to be able to prepare for the subsequent quarters of the year,
Yep.
you know? So,
Yes. And one of the things that I learned also in the last 3 years, I want to say, is that, and I think Chris also, because we were talking about this week, is where growth is when you can identify light lift, high revenue.
I revenue. Mm-hmm.
That's it. High
Mm.
returns, right? Light lift, high returns. That's
Mhm.
it. And so working towards that so that way you could free up your time to spend more time with family so it
Yep.
doesn't feel like a constant hustle and so that you can breathe, and also investing in other people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't realize when you start onboarding team members, like this freaked me out when Sholanda and I started working, and then Chris too, right? And then Scott and Pedro, Turuchina, right? So then it's like, oh my, and Wayne, right? So it's like we have like this posse, like this crew of amazing talent,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been working consistently even throughout the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We've been able to really bang out amazing projects, onboard new clients, experiment and do things with other people's money, right? Because they tell them, what can you do for us? We need to pivot. We need to pivot. We need to pivot. I'm like, we'll help you pivot, right? So, and then but because we're known for that. We're known for
Mm-hmm.
creating something to address a pain point, put out a fire, and then test it and then calibrate as we go
Right.
along to then make it better and better and better, so it could and then it starts yielding results, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a consequence of that. And I just feel like sometimes we hesitate in terms of investing or saying, oh, wow, so what's that going to cost me to pay for a copywriter? Or how much
Yeah.
is that going to cost me to market? Right? Or to, like Sholanda did to me 3 years ago, throw a massive 10th anniversary party. I'm like, you want to spend how much? Well,
She hadn't done any real marketing for 10
yeah,
years. So
yeah.
that goes to show, like one of the things that I think a lot of new entrepreneurs are intimidated about is like, how do I get my business known? How do I build that brand awareness? It's those relationships. It goes back.
Mhm.
People do business with people they know. People do business with people they trust. So it's
Trust.
really leveraging those relationships. And to Sami's credit, she's like a super networker. Like if somebody says I need a project on X and she doesn't know how to do it, she knows exactly who to call to get it done.
But that's what it's
That
about.
that's yeah, it's that's social capital
Mhm.
that is unmatched. And social capital can be translated into financial capital providing
There
you
we
have
go.
good collaborators.
Right.
Yes.
And
That makes
I,
sense. So let's hit this real quick. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to add, and I think one of the ways to add that social capital is through that action and actually being out
Mhm.
there and doing it and not just having it on paper. And I
Mhm.
think one other aspect of the whole how much do I plan versus how much do I start. One thing that I think entrepreneurs really need to understand is that people will respect you in your journey and they respect growth. So it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be perfect out of the gate. It
Mhm.
Yeah.
just has to be started and see the
Right.
momentum. People will come around and
Mhm.
people feed off of momentum. They want to be part of
Mhm.
momentum, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it needs to be perfect. And people will actually appreciate you if they've seen your growth over a period of time, and you're like, yeah, I used to do this, and now I'm doing these things. And
Mhm.
what might have been a no before would be a yes now because you've
Yeah.
shared that journey with them.
Mhm.
So I think that's just my thing is you don't have to come out and automatically be Oprah or an Elon Musk or
Right.
Steve Jobs and say like, oh, here I am, I invented the Mac. Like, no,
Mhm.
it's you appreciate Steve Jobs because of the journey and the failures and the roadblocks and how
Mhm.
he came back and his resilience. So
Right.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to add that in that like there's never a bad time to start in terms of preparedness if you believe it enough. You just have to be willing to make sure that you fill in the gaps as you go when you're starting to get that business.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And mhm.
Cool.
and I just wanted to say something because I'll burst if I don't. Um, and I just want to give some sound recommendations. It's not even advice. You take it or you leave it, okay? But from my experience, number one of my big pet peeves is that when you're doing well, don't become a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Come on, share, right? Don't be an asshole, right?
Mhm.
Wow.
There's enough out there,
For all of
for
us.
all of
Yeah.
us to prosper, right? And find generational wealth and leave a legacy for our kids. That's number one, okay? Because that is nothing that's a pet peeve of mine. I can't deal with it. Right. So that's
I'm
one.
gonna write
The
that. No
second thing
gatekeepers.
is give back. Give
Mm-hmm.
back. You know, if you have resources, whether it's income, whether it's monetary, whether it's designing, like in our case, you know how many logos I've designed pro bono? Like if someone in real need, right? Like the Hurricane Maria, some people that came from Hurricane Maria, right? There was this woman, she lost her bakery in Puerto Rico, right?
No.
And she came over here and she says, I want to start a business, a bakery. And I'm like, oh, you need to just bake, right? Start
Mhm.
baking, you know, and selling your stuff. And now, 4 years later, she's about to buy a house, right? And that's it. That to me is the biggest satisfaction, to see a sister, right? Finding
Mhm.
security and providing a safe environment, right? And that she's thriving for her kids and her family. So give back. Don't be so stuck up and so don't hoard, right? Your
Mhm.
resources. You know, you give and then you will receive. And then the
Yep.
last thing that I want to mention, and this I learned this year, rest. Find time to
Mm.
pause. I was telling Chris and Shalanda that I haven't had a real vacation. Yeah, I visited family in New York and in Puerto Rico. I've gone to St. Croix, but that, I mean, I love you all, right? But
But hey,
that's not
vacation.
real vacation,
No, because we
right?
run you ragged.
Exactly. It's like, let's go here, let's go there,
Let's go here. Let's go
let's
there.
cook together. A real vacation is I don't need to cook, right? Like, you know, it's like, I don't want to cook. I just want to sit, veg, sleep in late, and give me a drink, right? I want
Mhm.
keep the mojitos coming, right? That's a real vacation for me, right? And so I hadn't done it for 13 years. My daughter, Catalina, was born 12 years ago. So she doesn't know a version of mommy that's not
That's right.
working,
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
not hustling, that's not on the phone all the time, running to a meeting, sitting on a board, advocating
Mhm.
for the community. Because that's the other thing, right? To me, entrepreneurship and activism are not mutually exclusive. You need to show up and
Yep.
represent your people, right? And so then she doesn't know any other version of me that's
Mhm.
not constantly working without stop, because it's like a PTSD. I don't want to go back to being broke, right? And
Mhm.
so that thing is hovering over my head all the time. Like, you got to keep it going, got to keep it going. Don't drop the ball,
Mhm.
don't drop the ball, don't drop the ball, right? And so when we went on the vacation, we literally closed shop for a week. We went to Mexico because I said it's the only way I'm going to be able to unplug and not turn on the freaking computer, right? Went to
Mhm.
Mexico, came back, and on the way back, when we did our connecting flight in Houston, we had several hours, you know, the overlay. And I'm sitting there with my kid and my son, and I asked my daughter, Catalina, what was the your favorite part about the whole vacation? And she told me in a second flat that you didn't work.
Mm.
She told me that you didn't work. So
Mhm.
not the slide, not the wave pool, not the thing, the monorail that we did. None of that. Not eating out, fancy rest, none of that. It was that I didn't work. Okay.
Mhm.
And so while we strive, right, and work so hard to give our kids all the things that we didn't have, or better life,
Yep.
right, or better living conditions than we had growing up, at the end of the day, just know, entrepreneur out there, that all your kids want is your undivided attention.
Mm.
And time.
And
I'm
Time.
not gonna say
that's it.
anything about that.
Time.
Okay.
You don't need to say anything about it because I'm gonna
No,
jump in right here.
we
I'm gonna jump in
we
right
just
here
discussed this in the last
because
photo. I was like, guys,
no, 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 no. Because in a previous episode we talked about the things that you give up for entrepreneurship
Hmm.
and weighing where your
true.
priorities need to be. And it's
Hmm.
interesting we're having this conversation because I remember I telling Sami about what my daughter told me after many years in corporate setting. When I started working with Urbaner and I had the flexibility, she was like, "Oh my gosh, you would have never been able to do this when you worked at the hospital, mommy. You
Mm.
actually have time to spend with me. And so I want to implore entrepreneurs as we are thriving, and especially you, Chris, because you have the most beautiful little brand new baby girl. And I know you are on the grind, and I know that you are hustling and you're going to be mega successful. But we have to balance our entrepreneur's trip with our time with those people that we love,
That's true.
especially our kids, because we're setting an example for them. We're trying to build that legacy, but we're also setting an example for them,
Absolutely.
That's
you
true.
know?
So true.
Yeah.
So with that, Sammy, Shalana,
Mhm.
I want to touch really quickly on that one word: invest, invest, invest. I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, we believe it's really monetary, and that's not even entrepreneurs, to tell you the truth. When people hear invest, what we really hear is money, and we
But
don't
don't.
understand the fact that, just like we said, it time is money. You see what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Um, and that's it. So we not only invest your money, but how important it is to invest time. The time that you spent with Chris, Sammy, to just give him that little nugget that he ran with, that helped define his business thus far. The time Shalana spent to come up with that operational plan. Now,
Hmm.
Sammy, you don't have to tell us that it was less than 2,000 words, because we know how Shalana gets. But it's
I'm
just that
expressive. What can I say?
is that time and investment of your time in other people. I love the fact that you said no, don't gatekeep. I've met people they got to a certain point, and for me, what made me sane about the situation is that I just think that they don't know a better way to handle the situation. um and that's what it is. I felt like I blame it on, but they do become gatekeepers. They do. They cut you off at a certain point. The you. I thought you were an entrepreneur. Yeah, but you just don't do that. Just don't pass this line. So what
Hmm.
happens when you pass the line? No, no, you're not gonna pass the line. Just don't do it. And with Shalana, it happened to me, and it was like I told her we're working on another passion project. um, and I was telling her about how I love how organic we work together, because entrepreneurs sometimes believe like they have an idea and they're the only person with an idea.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I wanted to do interviews with these set of people. And I'm like, oh shit, Shalana wants to do that. I'm not gonna say shit. I have my project. I gotta hold it near and dear.
Hmm.
We can't say a word. And the beauty of it was, I don't even know how we came up, Shalana, but we started talking about interviews and what it is and we wanted to. Shalana was like, "That's great. I had an idea or something similar, and it's like
Hmm.
this. And if you want to," she didn't even have to ask to collaborate. Even if I couldn't work with her on the project, I would have just been happy knowing that I've contributed to an aspect of that project. And the reason why I'm saying that is because as entrepreneurs, what I want us to keep in mind is, one, we're always thinking. There's
Hmm.
no idea to me that's a new idea. There are only those that implement the ideas, and that's
Yes.
the difference.
Yep.
So when we have these ideas, it's not for us to gatekeep and block Sammy from going here because we're afraid that Sammy might do better, or we're afraid of what the outcome is. Like, we don't need people to protect you all the time. We need people to take this trip with. You know, thank you, Sammy, for taking this trip with us, and bringing a lot of things that we spoke about in the previous cast to light in different ways. Your experience has been different from all of our experiences, but it's just beautiful to see how you have continued to reinvest your time and spend this time with us to pass on these tokens of knowledge. So tell us a little bit more about these investments that we make.
Listen, investments of time and um, honesty, they have to be just the honest relationship building. I think that's your most solid investment. If there's nothing else, right?
Hmm.
Because that's what stays with you. I gotta tell you, because of my big mouth, right? Because I'm kind of disruptive here in the community
Are you
as an
really?
advocate.
We never noticed.
No, you didn't. Well, if you didn't know, because I try to advocate for underrepresented and underserved communities, right?
Mhm,
And I'm quick to call a spade and
mhm,
to not beat around the bush. Let's just call it what it is, right? And so I get into trouble for it sometimes. Not because I'm rude. I behave in pub and I know how to behave,
That's
right?
rock is
So
the
I'm
same, man.
appropriate. Sometimes I don't because people deserve it, right? But for the most part, right?
mhm,
You can get your point across, but it just doesn't sit well because you're speaking truth to
mhm,
power,
Right.
right? And people don't like that. And
mhm,
so, um, a few years back, okay, I had a client who's still a client. She's not at a company, but she's still a client. She moved to another company and now we have that account now, right? Right. So imagine that. But anyway, there was a local, turmoil. I'm not gonna get into it, right? But there was kind of like a clash with with other leaders here in the community in Orlando, because I was just doing my thing, making interventions because the support was lackluster, and so we started collaborating, right? And
mhm,
people felt, I think, I'm assuming, right, intimidated, and we're starting to talk smack about me. And I get a call and say, "Hey, I was on this board meeting and you're my friend." You see, things get back to you. And
mhm,
um and they're saying A, B, C, D about you. So what did I do? I picked up my cell phone because I thought this other leader was my friend, or at least that we were friendly, right?
No, it happens
And I
that way.
pick up,
It happens
I
that
pick
way.
up the phone and call the person. I'm not gonna beat around the bush, right? I say, "Hey," and the person's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "That's what I'm asking you. What's going on?" Because I just got a call
Mm,
that you're talking smack about me, right?
mhm,
Make
meet
a
me
long
outside.
story short, yeah. And so we hashed it out, but this whole thing, right, which is just here, whatever, right, got to my client, and my client called me and said, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know. This person has a chip on her shoulder. I don't know what's going on. I'm just doing my thing. You know that I'm trying to support the community and the nonprofit organizations and the people, right, affected by this thing that happened here in Orlando, Pulse." And yeah, it was that,
mhm,
right? And so then,
mhm,
and then my client told me, "Listen, I'm not the CEO of this company, right? But,
mhm,
and I'm going to defend you because I know you and I know your reputation and what you're doing. However, it's not my company. So I
mhm,
don't make the last call. So I just want you to be careful, right? Because I don't want to have to let you go, right? Because of the situation." And I told my client, I said, irrespective of what happens, of the outcome, we never lost the account, right? But I told her, irrespective of the outcome of this whole thing that this other person's creating, how do you feel about me? Right? What do you? And she's like, "Oh no, I love you. I respect you. I value you." And I said, "That's all that matters to me."
mhm,
At the end of the day, if you and I are okay and our relationship is intact, everything, nothing else matters. And so that entire story to say, just stand
to
true
who
to
you
your purpose, to your truth, do the right thing because people see and people know. And by the way, that person that was creating the mask got fired from the organization. You know what I'm saying? And so then,
Sammy, real people do real things, baby.
you
That's
know
how
what
we
I'm
say it
saying?
here.
So then,
Real people do
don't
real
get caught
things.
up. Don't get caught
Mhm,
up in drama and you know that and develop a thick skin because the more you grow and the more you do and the
mhm,
more opportunity you have to harness and to bring people together and to really affect change, the more haters are going to be
Yep.
trying to pull you
That's how
down,
you know
right?
you're doing the right thing, though.
yeah,
Invest in relationships is where
yes,
I'm getting at. So, and investments, yeah, you can invest in a whole bunch of things, but relationship building, that social capital, is
mhm.
sometimes more valuable
Yep.
than monetary
Money in the bank.
capital.
Mhm,
Yeah. Mhm.
mhm.
Well, this has been
Yeah.
awesome, Sami. Thank you so
Oh
much.
my.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
He would
delighted.
drop
Thank
his
you so much
coins.
I
for
know.
having me. This was so much fun. And I
Of
think I learned
course.
too from your
Good.
experiences. And like I said before, my story is really not unique, in the sense where there are a lot of common denominators. The thing is, people don't
Right.
speak openly
Mhm.
about the trials and tribulations. And so I think we need to do more of that. And so I salute
Ooh,
you and I congratulate you for this platform that you've created to have these candid conversations.
Mhm. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want our listening audience to know that this entrepreneur's trip is possible because we learned so much under Sammy
Yes.
with I Have Something to Say. So all the peaks and valleys and the tribulations we went through with her, this is this is the baby.
Yeah.
One of your babies to Sammy. So
Sammy wrote
thank
the
you for
blueprint.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, Sammy's truly the entrepreneur's entrepreneur. Before we close, I wanted to say a quote from Raul Julia, who is from Puerto Rico. He was an actor, and he had the Golden Globe and Emmy Award for The Burning Season. And he had this quote, and I saw the quote and I thought of you, Sammy.
Hmm.
It says, "It was a very profound experience getting in touch with that part of us, in all of us human beings that are committed beyond yourself to the point of giving everything you have, including your life, for other people, for your fellow man." Sami,
Hmm.
mil gracias, mi amor. Thank you so much to our
Hmm.
listening audience for joining the Entrepreneur's Trip. We are XTC. I am Shalonda.
And I'm Tristan.
And I'm Chris.
And thank you, Sami. Take care,
And
everyone.
thank you. And I'm sorry. Thank you.